All right, so today we're just going to continue on Jdbc. We might finish up with it today. If not, then we'll finish up with it next week on Monday. And that will conclude the first half of the course, after which we'll be going into data structures and algorithms, the more theoretical half of the course. So remember that we were working through this process of programmatically connecting to our database using Jdbc. We do so by creating a connection to the database. We then create and prepare a query. Generally, I like to go ahead and work in MySQL Workbench and formulate the query, make sure that it's syntactically correct, and then bring it over here into my Eclipse. Once we've created the query, we prepare the query using a prepared statement. Remember that we've got a connection class, a prepared statement, and then finally, if we're expecting results back from the data set or from the database, we're going to expect a result set back that we process those results. We'll quickly get into the other, remember, create, retrieve, update, and destroy. We'll get into those other three of putting stuff into our database called persisting right after we're done pulling stuff out of the database. And then finally, make sure to always close your resources. Failure to close your resources means that you will eventually run out of connections to the database, at which point the 31st connection, I believe it is the one that gets rejected, okay? So I created this database loader class where we have our URL, our username, and our password, and we end up creating a query, or we end up creating a connection. We do our query here, we have our prepared statement, and then we process the results in a while loop here. All right, so this works great to load up all the people, but what if you're looking for one particular person? For example, what if I want Grace Hopper there? Right? So would I go ahead and say select everything from person? Right? Oh, okay, there she is. There's the first one. Right? If you want to be more intentional about this, though, how should I go about just selecting only Grace and only Grace? What would I do with my query right here? Where, okay, we could go by name, right? Where the first name is equal to Grace, and last name is equal to Hopper, right? There could be two Grace Hoppers in this world, right? In which case, you know, we would pull all that Grace Hopper and that Grace Hopper, that John Smith, 50 different John Smiths, okay? As far as our database is concerned, though, how could we be assured that we're getting a particular person? How is a person uniquely identified in our database? As a person ID. So let's go ahead and change this to where person ID is equal to, remember, I do remember that if we selected all the people, we would get them all back, but I also remember because I hard-coded this value right here, this is our test data, it is perfectly fine to go ahead and hard-code test data values, right? In fact, it's recommended so that you don't have to play any guesswork. There, now I'm going to only get Grace Hopper back. Okay, great. So let's go ahead and think about that in terms of our data loading class over here. If you find it convenient to load up all the people at once, great, go ahead and do that. If you might want to have a convenience function, a helper function, that loads up one particular person at a time, you probably can do that too, right? Public person, load person by ID, say, right? And here we'll go ahead and give it a person ID. Okay? Now this is not going to load up every single person like this one did. This is going to load up one person. Here's my first idea. My first idea is, well, I've already written this, right? So let's go ahead and load up all the people, right? List of person, right? Everyone, all, right, is equal to load persons. There we go. And then to do iterate through and find the person with person ID, right? Return. I'm not even going to bother writing the code for the rest of this, right? Now, from a coding point of view, this seems like it's okay, right? You go ahead and give me everything, and okay, that's not it, that's not it. Oh, there's Grace Hopper right there. There's, that's the one I want, right? We saw a lot of this in your second phase, where instead of loading up, say, all the items once, for each invoice, you loaded up the items again and again and again and again and again. And you never saw the consequences of that because it was all just a bunch of local files. But now think about the context that we're in now, right? Right now we're in a database context. How is this data actually getting to us, right? It's going over the wire, over the network, because this database server is over in the basement of Avery Hall. Actually, I think it's no longer in a basement. It might be in the engineering hall now, right? I'm not sure where they put it, but it's somewhere, right? Now think about the slowest bottleneck of a computer, of a modern computer, right? All of your processors are fast. My processor is fast. I've got an i9 right here, right? Over on the server, they're certainly fast, right? I've got a bunch of memory. They've got a bunch of memory. What's the actual bottleneck between two modern computers? The network, right? In fact, what is the cheapest, fastest way of transmitting data, even today in 2023? If I've got I could load up an entire semi-truck full of hard drives, drive it across the country, hook everything up, and have all the data right then and there in a fraction of the time that you could send that over the fastest network available today, right? Just volume-wise, that's still the cheapest route and the quickest route of doing stuff, physically moving stuff, right? It doesn't matter if you set up a torrent. It doesn't matter if you crowdsource it. It doesn't matter. It's physically moving data is still going to be faster, right? In the long run with larger data. If you're sending only 1 bit, of course, I can't beat that. But network is still your bottleneck. So it doesn't make sense to load up all the data, transmit it all over the wire when you're not going to use any of it except for one record. Probably not. So let's rethink this. I'm probably going to want a person, right? Person P. I'll initialize them to null. Eventually, I'll return that person, right? I'm going to want to connect to the database and only pull one record and one record only, right? So to do that, I'm going to go ahead and grab all of this, right? Oh, by the way, we're going to come back here and do the emails. But let me go ahead and put, we'll just do it up here, right? I'll just leave that as a to-do, all right? So there's our URL, there's our username, there's our password, there's our connection. If you find yourself cutting and pasting the same code over and over again, what should that be screaming out to you? Probably put that somewhere else in a function. We call that a factory function or a factory class. Doing so on your next phase, not the current phase, but the next phase, is worth bonus points because it's what you should be doing anyway. Right? I'm not going to do it because I don't want to do your bonus points for you. Right? All right, so the rest of the program here. It's no longer a query string that selects everybody. Right? It's going to be this query string that selects a particular person. There we go. Is it going to be that person with ID 10 every single time? Nope, it's not always going to be Grace Hopper. It's going to be parameterized here. So here's my first idea. Okay, well, that's just an integer. Let me go ahead and concatenate this, person ID. Right? If you find yourself using concatenation in any language for any database stuff, you are doing something majorly wrong. Right? It doesn't matter that it's Java. It doesn't matter that it's Python. It doesn't matter that it's C. If you're doing string concatenation, you are doing unsanitized SQL statements, and you are and you are opening yourself up to an SQL injection attack. If you find yourself doing concatenation, rethink what you're doing, right? Because it's definitely wrong in any language, in any situation. Right? It doesn't matter. All right. So how do we parameterize this? Well, if this were a printf style placeholder, I would have something that looks like this, %d, right? It's not printf style. Instead, it is Jdbc style. Question mark. Question mark is your placeholder, right? What we're going to do is we're going to let the Jdbc interface, the library, come in and replace that question mark for us with this person ID up here, okay? The way that we do, yeah, go ahead. Question? Anybody? Okay. The way that we do that is we prepare our statement, and then we prepare that one parameter, ps.set an integer, because that's what it is. And the first one is going to be that person ID. If you had multiple ones, like and foo is equal to question mark, and bar is equal to question mark, now I've got 1, 2, 3, right? I've got 1, 2, 3 placeholders. It is one index. So the first one is at 1. Then the second one would be at 2. Foo would equal to 2. And then the third one would be at 3. Don't ask me why they didn't start indexing at 0. It's wrong in my opinion as well, right? Don't ask me why they didn't do something more modern. Well, because it's old. That's why they didn't do it more modern, but what are called named parameters. So we won't probably go over JPA, but in the JPA you can actually use named parameters, person ID, right? Where this colon here and then the thing after it is a named parameter that then gets replaced with whatever that person ID ends up being, 10, right? So this question mark here, after we prepare the statement and set this integer, it'll end up magically coming over here and changing it to 10. Now you might be thinking, well, that's not that big of a deal. It's an integer. What could go wrong, right? Everything could go wrong, right? And I'll show that to you later. The story of Little Bobby Tables, if you've ever seen that comic before from XKCD, right? All right, so we've set our integer. Then we execute our query expecting a result set back. We process the result set. Before I do that, how many are we expecting back? 1, right? What could go wrong? What if over here in the demo, I ask for somebody that doesn't exist? Person P is equal to data loader dot load person by ID 42, right? I'm pretty sure that there's not a person in there with 42 because I went 10, 20, 30, 40, right? What should we expect back? Here's where a design issue comes in. If we ask for something that doesn't exist, how do we want that communicated back to us, right? We could throw an exception, right? Over here, if not rs.next, that means that there's not even one result, right? Then we can go ahead and throw a new illegal state exception, no such person, right? That's one option. What's another option? Instead of forcing them to surround it with a try-catch, what's another thing that we could throw at them? Or not throw at them, but you throw exceptions. What's something that we could give to you to say, here's what you asked for, it doesn't exist? Null, right? And up here, I already set my person to null here. So let's process this result and say that if you have one element in here, then go ahead and, well, we don't need the person ID. Why? Because we were given the person ID. But then go ahead and load up the first name, the last name, the date of birth, and then go ahead and create this person, which is already declared. There we go. Now down here, I'll leave this to do here, right? Now down here, what we can do is return this person. Get rid of that. If this never executes, then we'll go ahead and close our result set, close our prepared statement, close up the connection, and this value here never would have been initialized, in which case we return P here. This compiles. Let's go ahead and see if it works. Ask for somebody that doesn't exist. System.out.println P. There we go. And let's go ahead and run this. There we go. We get our 4 people that are in fact in the database, and then we get this null value right here. Right? Half a dozen of one, 6 of the other. Do you want to throw an exception, or do you want to return a flag value? Those are your design questions that you need to answer for yourself. What would you want to do? Oh, I would want it to throw an exception. All right, well then go ahead and do that. Right? In my opinion, the returning null is just as fine, right? Because eventually it's going to result in a null pointer exception if you don't do anything with it. So you might as well just go ahead and return null. Right? But that's me. What else could we check for here? If you have one result, great, go ahead and process it. Maybe we want to do some defensive programming here. If rs.next. If there's another result, is that a good situation? There are 2 people with that same person ID. Throw new illegal state exception. Some DBA screwed with our schema. Right? Shame on them. Right? Because that can't happen. The way that we designed this database, remember, how did we design this database? We made this into a primary key, integer, not null, auto increment. It is unique. There is not going to be 2 people with that person ID. So if this ever happens, then somebody screwed up somewhere. That wasn't us. Right? So you can be defensive about it and say something, since it's all your project, you did screw up, right? Because you designed the database. Oops, sorry, screwed that up. right? But so here I'm just blaming some other DBA, database administrator, right? They went in and changed the database on us. It's no longer a unique primary key, right? I'm going to throw an exception here because that's a huge red flag that we need to go talk to those DBAs about our expectations on this database. Right? This is a little bit more defensive. This ain't going to happen though. There we go. Run this, 42. Let's go ahead and run it for something that we do know will work. Grace Hopper there. There we go. But what are we missing? In fact, what are we still missing from everybody? Their emails. Before we do that, I'll note here that we've got a lot of the same repeated code here, right? That's probably okay in this case because it's doing one thing and one thing only. But if I wanted to modify this, how could I modify load persons to maybe reduce the amount of code that I have here? I could call load person. As long as I load up all of the, strings or primary keys first. Select person ID from person. What if I executed that command and now I've got 10, 20, 30, 40? And I've already got that function over there that will load up every single person, right, based on that ID. Then I don't have to repeat so much code. Right? In fact, I'm about to write 2 blocks of code that will load up their emails, right? To do load up the email of each person, of this person, right? I don't want to have to write that twice. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and change this function so that it calls that other function, and so I don't have to do so much work, right? I'll let you do that as an exercise, though. All right. Let's go ahead and load up the emails of each person now, right? Not each person, of the loaded person. Right? There we go. All right. Well, if the person is null, maybe I don't do that. So if p is not equal to null, that means that it was successfully loaded up. Do I need to open up another connection? Nope. Well, if I closed it, I would have to, right? Why'd you close it just to open it up again? Why'd you open up that file and then close it and then open it again and close, open, close, open, close, open, close for every single invoice that you did? Don't do that, right? You're definitely not going to want to do that with your database, because if you do that, you're going to run out of those 30 persistent connections really quick. And also, you are going to notice it going over the wire, right? Especially if you're at home and off campus, right? So I'm not going to go ahead and close the connection. I did close the result set because I'm done with that. I did close the prepared statement because I'm done with that particular statement. Now let's think about Grace Hopper here. How do I get her emails or email addresses? Right? I'm going to go over here and grab the email or the address from the email table. So what does that look like? I will select everything from email where person ID is equal to 10. There we go. And I'll get her 2 emails back. Here I might be expecting 0 emails because I don't think that one of them doesn't have any emails. One of them has 3 emails. One of them has 1 email. Some of them have 2 emails, right? And so I am going to want a result set as well. Right? So let's go ahead and prepare our statement. PS is equal to con.prepare statement. And let me go ahead and change the query, actually. The query string, query is equal to, and here, again, I'm developing my queries over here in MySQL Workbench so that I can come back over here and just put them here with a question mark. There we go. Prepare the statement. Set that parameter, set integer to be person. The first one is person ID, same person ID as before. RS is equal to PS dot execute query, and then the same while loop that we had below. While RS dot next. Right? This is kind of an idiomatic, when we talk about idiomatic for loops for int I equals 0, I is less than n, I plus plus. This is the idiomatic for loop for Jdbc. Right? That's the old school. An old school Java way of doing an iterator pattern. Right? So while rs is equal to next, I'm going to go ahead and pull out the address string, our email address is equal to rs dot get string, and it's going to be address. There we go. Email address versus address. Right? Maybe I want to name my variable what? Address, so that it matches, so that there's no guesswork. So I'll go ahead and take that and put it over here. And then that person, which is not null, otherwise I wouldn't be here at this point, I'm going to add their email. There. Done. Once you are done iterating over the result set, rs.close, ps.close, not clear batch, but close. And then finally, only after you are done with the connection, do you close it. Okay? Let's run this again and see if we get Grace Hopper's 2 emails now. Wonderful. Now we're getting her emails. And in fact, again, maybe I want to go back and modify this other function so that it calls that other function so that I don't have to load up, load up every single person's email over here. Before I do that, and I'm not going to do that, I'm going to let you do that, let's think about what we're actually pulling over here. Let me run this again. So I'm not just pulling her email addresses, am I? I'm also pulling the email ID and duplicate copies of the person ID, which I already know. So that was a consequence of me using this wildcard right here. Pull everything. Again, the network matters, right? Memory doesn't matter. Like if you're wasting like 10, 20, 30 kilobytes or something like that, who cares in today's modern age, right? That's just memory. But if you're wasting that much bandwidth, you better care even today in 2023, right? Because we do not have instant quantum communication between networks, right? You are wasting network bandwidth to send over 4 bytes, 8 bytes, so what, 16 bytes in total that you're not actually using over here. All you're using is the email address over here. So let's be more intentional. What should we be grabbing? Just the address. Right? There we go. I'll go ahead and modify this over here, address. Now you're not going to notice it, it's not going to be a million times quicker now, right? But if you were doing this for 1 million records, you better believe it would be 1 million times quicker versus pulling all that information over the wire. Not only that, but again, that terrible some DBA that screwed up. What if what if we did a more complex query? For example, I could have done all of this stuff in one query, right? I could have selected everything from person, P, and then join email E on p.personid is equal to p.personid, where you're looking for a particular person. Right? Come on. Person ID, oh, sorry, E.personid. I repeated P there. Oops, nope, what's wrong? E, join, what are you complaining about? Person ID and where clause, oh, it's ambiguous. I need p.personid. There we go. All right, finally, there we go. All right. Now imagine that you were pulling this over the wire instead. What we did in Jdbc, and I did it very intentionally, is we made one connection, then we made one query to query one table. Then we made another query to query the second table. I could have made one query that immediately joined everything together. But think about the consequences of that. What are you doing? Person ID is now not, I mean, first of all, you don't even need the person ID because you already have it, right? But not only that, you're sending it once, twice, because that's your join column, right? You are using the first name and the last name, but you're also pulling duplicates for every single email record. What if they had 50 email records? You're pulling 50 copies of Grace over the wire for what purpose, right? You're wasting bandwidth even more. Not only that, but suppose that we have some screwed up DBA that comes in and says, you know what? We should be storing everybody's profile picture in the database. I'm going to go ahead and add a 4 megabyte minimum column to the person table to store a JPEG file of their headshot. Right? Now, if you're using select star, guess what you're now pulling? That 4 megabyte file, even though you're not going to end up using it at all. Right? So yeah, it's no big deal if you pull a few hundred bytes of data over the wire, and yeah, you're not gonna break the bank. But you still should not be using wildcards because it protects you, it future-proofs you to any changes in the database where they're storing blobs. Right? That is a term, by the way. A blob is a binary large object. Right? A binary large object that could be 4 megabytes of your headshot, right? Or, you know what, they also posted a video introduction. Let's go ahead and post that 4 gigabyte video full 4K video in this table here. Now you're pulling over 4 gigabytes just to get their first name and their last name and their date of birth. Don't do that. Right? Future-proof yourself. Avoid using the star operator here. Right? You could do it all in one. Well, you know, you'd still have repeated data if you did it all in one. But so we'll go ahead and go with this: first name, last name, date of birth. That's all. If that's all you're using, then that's all you should be querying. Right? And this is why using the wildcard is perfectly fine over here, because you're just doing development over here. But over here, this is going to go out to a production system, and it's going to actually be impacting the application that you're writing. Question online. Applied for fall 2020 MS at UNL. Been watching your vids since lockdown. Thanks. Oh, okay, great. Thank you for the kind words. When I first started doing this, people kept asking me for, what is it? Your Patreon? Right? I don't have one. But if you ever see me in a bar, buy me a beer though, or something. All right, so there we go. That's all good. All right. Any questions on pulling stuff out of the database? Otherwise, putting stuff into the database is just pretty much straightforward. Same basic steps, except for you're not going to have any results unless you want them. And we'll understand why we would want them here in a moment. So let's go ahead and create a person over here, a brand new person. I don't know. Who's famous in the news right now? I don't know. Perlman? Oh, no, Perlman. No. Guy Fieri. Okay. Guy Fieri? Is that how you spell it? No clue either. All right, so we'll go ahead and create a Guy Fieri here. New person. All right. Now, what is their ID? Do they have any connection to the database yet? Nope. So maybe that's an argument for adding yet another, well, I guess we have it here, yet another constructor where you can construct it with the first name and the last name and the date of birth, but without the person. Oh, I guess I don't have the person ID here. Maybe that's an argument for going back and fixing this. So private int person ID, all right? And I'll put in a to-do here, right? You probably want to store that person ID so that you can get their emails later on or something, or their stores that they manage or the invoices that they use, something relevant to your project there. But otherwise, let's go ahead and add a date of birth here. Local date, date of birth. Right. And this dot date of birth is equal to date of birth. There we go. And so let's go ahead and create Guy Fieri over here. And I don't have their ID because it's not in the database yet, but Guy Fieri, I don't know, you tell me. Local date dot of, we'll just suppose that they were born yesterday. 03/3/21. No, 23 was yesterday. There we go. And bring this in, import that. Great. Now I've got this new ooh, why is that wrong? Oh, integer. Where is, okay, fine. Oh, I do have person ID. I'm not sure where I was getting that other person, but whatever. SOC person. All right, whatever. Anyway, I've got this Guy Fieri, and it has like a 0 or something. Or better yet, you know, let's come back here and rethink what this person ID is. Sometimes it's defined when you pulled it out from the database. Sometimes it's not defined when it's not yet in the database. So how could we accommodate for that modeling? We sometimes call this tri-valued logic. Something can be true, false, or a third option is unknown. What is unknown? Null. Can a small I integer be null in Java? Nope. But a big I integer can be. So maybe that's an argument that we want to say, not 0 is not null, but null is null. Right, there we go. And that this is an integer. There we go. And that's good. That looks good. This is in soc.unl. Oh, maybe I want to copy this over. Oh, maybe they're in different packages, and that's why. All right, so let's go ahead and, where is this one? That one's different, so let's go ahead and get rid of that one and delete that. Okay, and we're only going to use this other person from this other package up there. Or I guess I'm going to have to copy it. All right, where's person? Copy, and I want it over here. There we go. Now we're dealing with the same person here. I'll go ahead and get rid of that and then add a new constructor that does not force me to add all four of those things. Generate constructor using fields. Everything except for emails and person ID, generate that. And unfortunately, the auto-generated code is not ideal. Instead, you would probably want something like this. All right, and then is that the most general? Yep, that's the most general. Except for we want date of birth, sorry. There we go. There. All good. Again, if you ever need to redesign your classes, do so, right? Don't think that I wrote that class and it works and it's done and I'm never going to redesign it. It's called refactoring. You're adding more features, or you're making it a little bit more flexible. You're changing it. You're not changing the functionality that it had before. You're just adding additional functionality to make it a little bit more flexible. Right? Now we've got Guy Fieri, and I want to go ahead and use my data loader to save person, right? And I'll go ahead and give them Guy Fieri here. Before I continue, though, save person in a database data loader class. Does that sound right? A class that's responsible for loading data is also responsible for saving data. We also call that, by the way, persist data. Right. So it sounds to me like we need something else. Right. So let's go ahead and create a new class that is responsible for saving data. Data saver, right? Data persister, right? Database API. I don't know what to call it either. Don't worry, for your project, we give you an API that you have to implement, and we named it already. I think it's invoice database, or now I don't even remember what it is. All right, anyway, we're going to go ahead and create a public static void, for now, save person, that takes a person P. And what we're going to do is we're going to add this person to the database, ... Okay? And now this is compiling over here. Oh, and it's not compiling. We not data saver dot save person Guy Fieri. There. Did I not make it static? Public static void save person. Import that from entities. There we go. All right. And why are you still complaining? Oh, because I'm using a different person. Okay. Let's go ahead and get rid of that. All right, fine. Import entities. All right. Undo, undo, undo. That will be my person. So I just need to make sure that this person is the same as that person right there. Now it works. All right. Too many people. Too many person classes. This is why you shouldn't have multiple person classes. I did it because I'm doing a demonstration here and I wanted a clean file. All right, anyway, 15 minutes. Hopefully we can do this. Let's add this person to the database. Well, what's the first thing I need to do? I need a connection to the database. Well, guess what? That's going to be yet another cut and paste, cut and paste, cut and paste. Maybe I should be doing this a little bit differently, right? Putting this into a what's called a factory function that's responsible for saving all of this connection information in one location so that when you go and change your password, it's changed in one location. Right? That it's responsible for getting these connections, right? And you can even go more advanced on it and do what's called a connection pool that we'll talk about at the end. Right? We're not expecting that even for bonus in this class, though. Right? All right, so I've got my connection. Let's formulate my query. How did I insert people over here? This query right here, but I did it over and over and over again. So let me go ahead and grab that and bring it over here. And let's formulate this query up here. Query string query is equal to this thing. Ugly, ugly cut and paste. Something really cool that was introduced in Java 12 or something like that in the last maybe 5-10 years that those of you from Python will recognize immediately is if you've got a string with 3 quotes, what is that? It's a multi-line string. Too many, there we go. You can go ahead and put strings, 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 and preserve that. You did do this in Python all the time, right? Multi-line strings, right? Multi-line formatted strings, right? So that you don't have that you can preserve the formatting that you want of multiple lines. There we go. Now I can preserve the formatting of multiple lines. Still, it's best practice to indent over because if you don't, then you'll have it all over the place. Generally, multi-line strings. Don't want that. Undo, undo, undo. Multi-line strings will ignore all leading white space. So if you're actually to print this out, it would not actually have this leading white space here. Okay. So insert into person values, and then I'm going to replace all of this. Well, first of all, should I be specifying the person ID? This is no longer test data. This is just pure data. All right, so get rid of that. So 1, 2, 3 placeholders here. There. And then if you want to, I mean, it's not that long of a string. There's no call for a multi-line string here. But if you want to, go ahead. Oops. There we go. Values. There you go. A lot of the times you like to line things up like that. It's complaining because I've got way too many. There we go. 3. 3 quotes. 3 quotes. Don't ask me why they didn't do 2 quotes in Java because why would... To make it absolutely clear that this is a multi-line string, 2 quotes would have been enough for any language. That's got me thinking now. That's a head scratcher. Anyway, I like to do this simply because it's a new feature and it's cool, but also because it means that if you align these 3 parameters up and you align this up here, it's way easier to see 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And you will never have an issue like, oh, sorry, it did 4, right? Or it'll be less likely that you have that issue. There's my query, create my connection, prepare my statement, prepared statement, PS is equal to con.prepare statement, or prepare statement, there we go, and query, there we go, need to bring that in, import that, and then we can set up our prepared statement, ps.set, I need to set each one of these parameters. All of them are strings. If it were an integer, you would have set int. If it were a double, set double, or set float, or something like that. This one is all strings, so it's going to be set string. Come on. Whoa. There we go. I had to really think about that. What is it? P.get first name. Set the second string, the third string, 2, 3. That's the last name. And that is going to be .get date of birth. Except that it's going to complain about that. How am I representing the date of birth? As a local date, as I should be. But when it goes into the database, it's not a local date. Right? It's not a date at all. It's a varchar, a string. So, how do I change this into a string? ToString. And it's going to be the correct 8601 formatted string that I expect over here in my database that looks like this. Why? Because that's the standard, 8601, right? That's the correct way to do it. That's the only correct way to do it. Right? And computer scientists are the only ones that do it correctly. Right? All right, so now I execute. ps.execute update. It's not execute query. Execute query is pulling stuff from the database. Execute update is for update, delete, and insert. Right? There is no execute insert statement. There is no execute delete statement. All 3 of those things of CRUD are going to be all execute update. Don't ask me why. Right? There. Make sure that you are closing your resources. Close. There we go. Wonderful. Now let's come over here to demo, and let's see if it actually works. Run this. Uh-oh. Get first name because P is null. Oops. Oh, why didn't we give Guy Fieri here? I probably screwed up somewhere. There we go. All right, now there's an SQL exception. You have an SQL in your syntax, check the manual corresponds, near line 3. Maybe it's because I'm doing multi-line stuff. So insert into person, that values, I do indeed have an SQL syntax error. What is that? There's no comma at the end. There's be a semicolon at the end if you wanted it, but it's not necessary. Right. Thank you. There we go. All right, so no news is good news. Let's come over here to our MySQL workbench and see if it worked. Select everything from person P. Let's just make sure that Guy Fieri got in there. There he is, Guy Fieri. With the generated value of 41, the next one that was available after 40. Right. Let's go ahead and see if we've got his emails in there. Did we actually add any emails for Guy Fieri? I don't think we did. Right. Oops. Guy Fieri was 41. There we go. And he doesn't have any emails. That's because we didn't put them in. So let's add some emails and modify our code so that we're actually persisting that stuff too. Guy Fieri .add email foo@bar.com. Let's add 2 just to make sure. bar@foo.com. There we go. And let's come over here. Let's run it again and see if it works. All right. Come over here. And let's go ahead and select everything from person P. What's wrong? We now have 2 Guy Fieris. You can never have enough Guy Fieris, right? No, that's not how you identify uniquely a person, right? 41 and 42, now we've got 2 Guy Fieris. Maybe that's what we want. If it's not what we want, then we need to go back and fix it, right? I'm sure that there are probably 2 people at least in this world. So, some Fieri family named their son after a guy after he became famous or something like that, right? So it is certainly possible, but should they certainly have a different person name, but should they have the same, say, natural key like a social security number or an NUID? Probably not. So think of ways around that, okay? But for now, let's just go ahead and make sure that their emails are getting in there. Once we've executed that update, what I need to do now is, because we might not have time to do it, insert the person's emails, ... So for each email, for string email, in the collection of person, get emails? Oh, I don't have a get emails method? Fine. So add a getter for it. I don't want to type it, so the best way to do that is source, generate getters and setters, generate a getter for the emails, and you are done. There we go. And it's saved over here. Okay. So for each email, what do I need to do now? I need another query where it's insert into email, the email table. What values? What do you need to insert into the email table? Certainly the address. Do you need the primary key? Nope, that'll be auto-generated. But you also need the foreign key, person ID. So let's go ahead and insert both of those, address and person ID. 2 parameters here. I won't bother with a multi-line string. I wouldn't have bothered with a multi-line string with something this short, but I just wanted to show it to you to make sure that you understand that it is a possibility. Right? So prepared statement, PS is, actually, I've already got PS, right? PS is equal to con.prepare statement with the query. That means that I should probably be closing the prepared statement up here right after I'm done with it. Right? I don't want to forget about it and then open up another prepared statement and never be able to close it. ps.set. The first one is an address, so it's the email address. ps.set integer, not array. Autocomplete did that string. Set an integer for the second one, and that's going to be person ID. Uh-oh. Now we're in trouble. Right? And we don't have 5 minutes to fix it. What was their person ID? I inserted them right here, right? So this inserts the new record. Even though it's called execute update, there is no execute insert. Right? If I did it over here, then I would be able to hard code those values, right? In fact, I did that with all my test case data because I wanted to make sure that I was associating those records with each other appropriately. When I just do that without regard for the person ID, right? Insert to person, first name, Joe, Schmo, right? Without that ID. Do I know anything about that person ID? Not just from this query. Right? So what we're going to need is a way to do update this statement so that the newly generated key, primary key value is returned. So we can use it below, ... In other words, we're going to want a person ID, right, is equal to 10. But I'll just do that so that it actually compiles down here, right? Actually, let me hard code that to 41 because that's where Guy Fieri is. And let me show you that you can actually execute this. ps.execute update. There we go. And you could close it after this and then reopen it and close it, ps.close, right? Does that seem like a good idea? Open it just to close it. Then on the next iteration of this for loop, open it again with the same exact query, close it again, open, close, open, close, open, close. Let's not do that. Let's take this stuff, move it outside of the loop here, and only close it when it's absolutely done. You're going to end up resetting these values on each iteration of the loop, right? You're going to end up setting the string to a different email, setting the person ID to another email. So actually, you could probably pull this out too, right? Technically, but I don't like, stylistically, that's kind of bad, right? Just go ahead and group those together, right? You're going to reset those parameters every single iteration of your loop, right? And instead of creating a brand new connection or a brand new prepared statement every single time. All right, that's good. Let me go ahead and execute this. Oh, come on. There we go. It was just really, really slow. There, yeah, not an infinite loop. It was just really, really slow. OBS is fine. So now you can start to see that the network delays, right? They now matter, right? Let me go ahead and come over here and see if we actually inserted those emails or not. Person P. And I'll go ahead and get rid of this where clause so that we can see everybody's email. And there. Guy Fieri, the original one, 41, now has his two emails, foo@bar.com and bar@foo.com. So it worked, but you don't want to hard code this value every single time. What you want is update this statement here, right? Fix this statement, so that the newly generated primary key value is returned so that we can use it below. And it's a pretty easy fix, but we don't have time to do it. We'll just do that on Monday and finish up. Okay? All right. Have a good weekend.